Hello and welcome to your Week 8, Day 4 lecture. Please take notes today as you will be responsible for this information on the quiz after this class. Today we're going to focus on ethics in tech writing. Ethics are essentially your moral principles. So having good ethics is knowing what is right and wrong and focusing on as much as you can on doing the right thing. I like to start my ethics lecture by talking about a story. My aerospace engineers out there, you guys are probably going to know about this. In 2003, the Columbia space shuttle took off, and it burned up on its re-entry back to Earth because 82 seconds after liftoff, a piece of foam insulation broke off and hit the left wing, breaking the thermal protection. I'm not even going to begin to act like I know what that even means. However, how that relates to ethics is that before the space shuttle even took off, NASA tasked a group of engineers with analyzing whether or not the Columbia was ready for takeoff. And this group of engineers made 27 PowerPoint slides that looked just like this. Ignore the arrows, ignore the highlights, they were added later. And what happened was that the key points, the points towards the tops of each slide were optimistic, while later bullet points were kind of doomsday. Therefore, the higher-ups at NASA deemed it safe and did not further investigate. The problem with that is that the NASA engineers were actually in the PowerPoint saying, yeah, it's not ready for takeoff. There's some significant dangers, significant damage. But because of the structure of PowerPoint itself, the NASA engineers did not get to process the information that was kind of hidden. The main takeaway here is that you want to make sure that document design-wise, you put the most important information of your document at the top in bold, have that stand out, while your minor information should be indented or in smaller font. Ethically, it is your responsibility to present information in a way that readers can approach what is important and what is not necessarily as important. Along those same lines is when you create your visuals for your final report, you have a lot of power in how you represent them in terms of the charts themselves. If you see on the left here, this is a misleading pie chart, when on the right is kind of the regular representation of the pie chart. What's misleading on the left is that item A looks just like item C, and item B looks smaller than item D. If we look at the regular pie chart, in fact, item D and item B are the same exact thing, while item A and item C are different. So be sure to pick visuals that are accurate and portray the information accurately. I shouldn't see any kind of 3D visuals as seen on the left because they are not good representations of the data a lot of the times. How you choose to present your sources is also a big ethical characteristic. So avoid cherry picking your data and evidence. An example of what cherry picking is saying something like, hey, I have this great new idea that will solve world hunger, cure cancer, and make mascara really waterproof. Now I just need some evidence to prove I'm right. So this is a kind of a funny example, but that's kind of the logic behind people who cherry pick their sources. You start with your thesis and then you go find sources that just support your thesis, ignoring everything else. That's problematic because a lot of the times when you're pulling information from different sources while ignoring the counter argument, you're not giving your readers the full picture, the full information. So avoid cherry picking. Classic example of cherry picking evidence is with climate change deniers. So if you look at the screenshot on the left here, from 1998 to 2012, I see that the climate didn't really change very much. It's actually slowly going down in terms of the temperature. However, what's on the right, from 1880 to 2016, you see this slow and gradual increase of the climate. The people who cite, the climate change deniers who cite the picture on the left are cherry picking the evidence because they're not looking at the full picture. Additionally, I have some further tips in terms of presentation of your sources and ethics. A lot of this is just repetitive of the rest of my class, and it should not be a big surprise to you. A, cite everything that is not common knowledge. You need to give credit where credit is due. If something is not your own opinion, then you need a citation, whether or not it's paraphrased or directly quoted. You also need to use a good number of reliable sources. For your final recommendation report, that's 5 sources. But the more sources that you use, the more it shows that you're not cherry picking, that you're going and expanding beyond just your own worldview, essentially. And then, of course, ethical principle number 1, avoid plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is taking someone else's direct language, or simply their ideas and presenting them as your own. So you always need to give credit where credit is due, and that does fall into the category of ideas. Your writing itself can also dictate what a person takes away from your document, and you do have a lot of power in the writing. My main takeaway from this slide is to be as objective as you can in your writing tone. In these two examples that I'm going to read out loud, content-wise, they're saying the same thing. However, the word choice itself dictates a very different tone. So A, the unruly crowd forced its way through the restraint barriers and ruthlessly attacked the rock star, versus B, the enthusiastic group of fans burst through the fence and rushed towards the rock star. Again, content is the same thing, but how the writing sounds changes the interpretation of each one of the sentences. So be as objective as you can in tech writing. I like to end my ethics lecture just by explaining that every single major company in industry is going to have some kind of ethics principles. Please, before you are hired for a specific job, please look at their website and look at their ethical principles and make sure that they align with your own, especially if you are in an industry that could be controversial. So say if you're working for a lab like Lawrence Livermore Labs, if you're working for a nuclear facility, something along those lines. So here's a screenshot of iFixit's laws and ethics. Again, if you're about to be hired by a company, look at those and make sure that they feel like they resonate with you. That is all that I have. It was a nice and short lecture today. If you have questions for me, please let me know, and your next step is to take the quiz tonight.